Hey everyone, just a heads up before we begin, I recorded this over a year ago. Originally I intended to do this 9th Doctor retrospective and then follow it up with a 10th, 11th, 12th, etc. But then I didn't continue past 9th, but I still want to continue eventually, so consider this like a pilot test episode of this Doctor Who retrospective thingy. I'm still proud of what I wrote, so I want to get it out there in some kind of fashion, so here it is. Doctor Who is one of the most beloved science fiction series out there. It stars the regenerating, space and time traveling Doctor and a companion or two getting into all sorts of hijinks and adventures. Much like my beloved Kamen Rider, Super Sentai, and Ultraman franchises, Doctor Who is constantly evolving and changing with the times and production mandates, with new showrunners and actors taking the stage every few years to shake things up, though Doctor Who is more continuous in its continuity than the more standalone tokusatsu series I cover. I'd even say the Revival series, or New Who as some fans call it, is one of the most talked about television programs on the modern day for its ups and downs through the 2 decades it's been broadcasted for. Today, I'm going to start a little look back at all of Revived Doctor Who in this little mini-series. I'll go episode by episode, giving my thoughts on each one from its 2005 debut to the 60th anniversary specials that more or less ended this era of the show. We got a lot of ground to cover in this first series, so let's just get into it. The first episode of Revived Doctor Who is titled Rose, which follows the newest companion of the Doctor, Rose, played by Billie Piper, as she gets into her first Doctor Who adventure with a whole lot of funny-looking mannequin people. This episode is also the first appearance of the 9th Doctor, played by Christopher Eccleston. While his clothing is much less whimsical than the past 8 Doctors in order to make him appeal to a more modern audience, he still has a ton of the charm and gravitas pouring from his performance as the character. I thought Rose was a solid intro episode. It eases new viewers into the show by having the first story take place at contemporary Britain with down-to-earth scenes building out Rose's home life before she decides to join the Doctor in some time-traveling adventures. So the next episode is called The End of the World, and this throws the viewers into the deep end in the best way possible. We're on a space colony where we see the sun is destroying the earth from the outside. There's tons of fun alien and creature effects being flexed on us, even having an emotional core with Rose grappling with the existential scenario she's been put in. I love the scene at the end of the episode where the Doctor and Rose have a heart-to-heart and go get chips. Yeah, Doctor Who is a fantastical sci-fi series, but it's also a show about appreciating the common joys in our life we may take for granted. As for The Unquiet Dead, it's not quite a miss, but it's not as good as the first 2 episodes. A lot of great ideas here, like Charles Dickens being a major character, but it just didn't correlate into a full enjoyable episode, which is disappointing for the first period piece of the Revived series. Aliens of London and World War III are the first true multi-part adventures of the Revived series. It takes place back in 2005, where Rose has been gone for nearly a year to her family and friends, while she and the Doctor have to stop these creepy farting aliens called Slavine from destroying the world and selling it to space markets. And yes, the fact that they fart is important. It's a legitimate plot point, and I don't know if I love or hate it. Either way, I found this 2-parter quite the exciting and scale-escalating adventure, even if the political commentary came across paper-thin in the grand scheme of things. Just the typical humans can be based, which I'm usually for, but it feels like a corporate-friendly sanitized version of what I like that message to be. This is also the first episode to truly emphasize CGI effects for Doctor Who, and yeah, they're rough, but it's 2005 CGI, so there's a bit of charm to how shoddy some parts look. I usually like CGI being used for creatures or to enhance visual particles, but sadly these episodes use the technology for a lot of boring looking ships and missiles, so I didn't really care for it here. It's still a solid adventure despite its weaker elements though. Dalek is a big episode, as it features the return of everyone's favorite exterminating robots, the Daleks. Well, this episode just focuses on one Dalek, the last surviving one, and it's where we properly learned of an off-screen war the Doctor took part in against the Daleks, which brings out all sorts of trauma in the Doctor's face-off of the classic foe. We see the usually kind and jovial Doctor lose himself in the rage to the point where the Dalek rebuts, saying that the Dalek would be perfect as the enemy he so despises. This story does a great job giving pathos to these destructive Daleks, showing how hatred and the way they've been born has twisted them into monsters with no purpose other than to kill. When the Dalek is given a further taste of complex emotions after absorbing Rose's DNA, he can't comprehend them and thus self-destructs. It makes me feel a little pity for this Dalek despite its body count. Dalek is such a fascinating story and a banger reintroduction to one of the most iconic Doctor Who foes. Dalek are some heavy shoes to fill, but luckily I enjoyed the log game just as much. It was cool seeing Simon Pegg play an evil editor who's controlling journalism in the future that instills fear in the population of Earth. It's solid satire of the industry, but what really interested me about this episode was Adam. Adam was introduced in the last episode and became a companion of the Doctor and Rose, but Adam decides to use the privilege of time travel for his own gain. This causes the Doctor to ban him from the TARDIS, and I quite like this plotline as it shows how the Doctor doesn't accept that kind of tomfoolery and why he's very picky about his companions. Speaking of companions, Father's Day was quite the emotional episode. Rose uses the TARDIS to meet her late father and later has to come to terms with her father's death since he must die in order to save everyone. It's an episode that's all about the emotions and performances of the cast rather than any mind-blowing reveals or special effects. Though after that gut punch of an episode, we have another two-parter, The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances, written by future showrunner Stephen Moffat, quite an infamous figure of Doctor Who in the wider TV landscape, but let's not worry about that now and worry about how this is a tension, mystery-filled narrative taking place during the London Blitz of World War II. There's a creepy masked child causing mischief and the Doctor has to stop him. I think what makes this two-parter work so well as a fan-favorite episode is the ending of the story being so fulfilling and exciting, having one of Eccleston's most iconic and best speeches as the Doctor. The Everyone Lives scene was something I've known about even before watching Doctor Who, so it was cool to see the original context of this fantastic moment of a solid two-parter. It's not my favorite story of the Ninth Doctor, but it's a high-quality one to be sure. Now, Boomtone is an episode I found interesting, as it follows up on the consequences of the first two-parter. One of the Slovene has stayed on Earth because she has a death sentence on her home planet, and while the funny conclusion to this conflict should have had the Doctor more involved with the choices made instead of the TARDIS doing all the work, I still love the interactions in between, especially during the dinner scene with the Doctor and the Slovene. However, the rest of the episode is typical Rose melodrama with her boyfriend that we've seen throughout the show. Some of it works, some of it doesn't, it happens with these romance subplots. A fine laid-back episode for Doctor Who standards before the big finale, Bad Wolf and the Parting of Ways. For the big Series 1 finale and the end of Eccleston's tenure as the Doctor, the production values are hugely stepped up here, especially in the second part. Some may find it a bit weird how the first part of the finale is a fun parody of game shows with a deathly twist, while the second part is more of a Dalek invasion story, but hey, I like both episodes well enough, especially seeing the Doctor sacrifice his current incarnation to save Rose. He's been alone and jaded from the Time War for so long, but he can finally let go of it to embrace the smaller but beautiful things in the grand scheme of space and time. This finale was heartwarming, but an ultimately bittersweet end to Christopher Eccleston's time as the Doctor. I wish he left under better production circumstances, but his performance was definitely integral to making the Revive series a success. Though it was convenient Mr. Eccleston had to leave so soon, as it could reintroduce the concept of the Doctor regenerating into new forms / actors for the modern audience who just discovered the show. But for now, that wraps up Doctor Who Series 1. Showrunner Russell T Davies and main actor Christopher Eccleston had a lot to prove in this season, not just by bringing back a beloved sci-fi program, but by showing that they can entertain children while not talking down to them. This ties into one of my favorite things Christopher Eccleston ever said during an interview, which was that it was a privilege to be in a kids program. I feel like we too often on the internet try to villainize programming intended for children, or try to make it more grown up than it seems when it's above average, but I think that's doing a big disservice to the target demographics. Yeah, Doctor Who has a hardcore teenager and adult fan base, even if it's marketed for children, but that's due to the fact that anyone can join in the fun because it's so well written and performed for all ages. While not every episode was the best it can be, the charm and drama of the Doctor and Rose helped carry my enjoyment through even the most okay episodes. I don't think there was any outright stinkers here. At most, an episode was just fine, which showed how Davies and his team really cared about putting their best foot forward with the Revive series.